Okay, well, in this last tutorial, we are going to just get a couple new techniques. We're going to use a lathe and we'll use a sweep to create a new handle. So what we'll do here is I'm going to create a new file. So we've got a new one. And again, just to be safe, double check, I'm going to go ahead and hit standard and save that. Now, if you want to always have this happen where you have a new file be in standard, what you can do is I've got this file here. I just changed it. What I can do is say File, Save As. There we go. And I'm just going to save it somewhere where I won't get rid of it. So maybe in my Documents folder. And I'm just going to call it Standard Render. Now, if you have any of your windows changed or anything like that, it'll save that as well. I'm just going to do standardrender.c4d, save it. Now, if I go to my preferences, if I come over here, say preferences, and under files, down here where we have our default scene, and you can change that to blank or that logo. If I do custom, and then I search for that, so if I go to documents, and I've got, where did I save that? There's my standard renderer, C4D, hit open, and now save that, close it. So now it'll do a new one of those. Now, I'm not sure if I have to restart, but let's try it. If we go, okay, so Untitled 7, do this, boom, new scene. Untitled 8, if we go and check our renderer, there we go. It should be set to standard. Let's do put a cube in this one. I'll do one more check, do a new file, boom, Untitled 9. The renderer is set to standard. So there you go. That's how you can do that. Okay, but on to the clock. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new fresh scene. Here's our clock. There's this. And in here, what we're going to do a couple things. We're going to use a lathe and we're going to do a sweep. A sweep is like an extrude, but you can go along, take one spline and move it along another spline, and that spline can be in 3D. So let's say if I come to our splines here, I'll create a star, and then I'll create a, how about a helix? So we can see that helix is doing its thing. Now I'm going to take my star and I'm going to bring it and scale it down. So I'm going to take it down to maybe 10 and outer radius of 15. Right, so I've got a little star there. And now what I can do, and you can change your points. I mean, all these splines are really fun. And so if I come in here, what I can do is say, let's create a sweep object. So I come over here to my generators, and down here is sweep. And if I drag, basically you want to drag this, what you want to sweep, and then what you want to have it swept along. So the shape you want to sweep, so you can see now, this star is moving along the helix. So the shape that's being swept is first, and then under that is the other one. And what's kind of cool about these is you can change any of this stuff on the fly. So we could come in here and adjust, all of our shapes. And both of these splines are still very editable. So if we change the height of this, all of this is kind of there. Now the sweep itself has some interesting things where we can scale it smaller at the end, or we can scale it, change the rotation. So if you want it to twist a long time, we can also do things like you can grow, let's do a start growth. So if you wanted to animate this showing up and drawing on, you could do something like that. We'll get deeper into the sweep on Thursday, but we'll just talk about, so we'll have this here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. That's just to show how a sweep works. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead, we've got an image in our folder that we're going to use. So I'm going to come into my front view, and over here under my attributes, I'm going to hit mode and hit view. And what we're going to do, we're going to load in an image in our background. Now this image won't render, but you can use it to model against, to get a shape or whatever you want to do. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say view and then go to back, right? So I did mode and I came down to view settings and then I clicked on back. And here it says image. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. Mine's in the desktop, ClockRound02, and new handle JPEG. And you can see there's that, and hit open. All right, so now it's just going to be here. It's in the background. Now, sometimes this is too, like it's hard to see your splines and things over it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and in my back selected transparency, you can start cranking that down. So I usually take it down to like, I don't know, 75% or something like that. And it's a lot easier to use. All right. And now I can just go ahead and ignore that. So what we're going to do is let's create this handle first, this top bit with a sweep. And so with a sweep, what I'm going to do, let's start with a rectangle spline. And I'm going to kind of center this up. And that looks like it's almost about right. So I just moved it up. And what we want to do is, get that kind of lined up. And then we're going to go ahead and narrow that in, get it close. And then I want to turn on my rounding on here. So hit my rounding and let's adjust that rounding radius a bit and find where that is. So I'm like maybe 75 and height of 400 and that width, I don't know, is that like 230 maybe? Yeah, we can try that. Okay, so we've got that. Now we want to create our thing. So this is just a, I think a circle I put around that one. Let's do a circle spline. And we can crank that down to maybe, let's see. Can I guess it? So 35, I think would probably be good. Let's see how that looks. Now what we want to do is, again, create our sweep object. There's our sweep. Drag in what you want to be swept, the circle around the rectangle. And now we can see, if we go to our four-way view, we've got that shape up there. Now I'm going to come back in here and I think my circle might be a little big. Well, let's check the rectangle. Bring my rectangle spline in a little and maybe let's go ahead and bring that circle and just scale that down. So I can just come in here, maybe try 30. It's closer. 25. Oh, that looks right. Okay. So there, that's close. It looks like we're a little short on our rectangle. So on the height here, let's crank that up a little. So I ended up somewhere around 400 and 225. Okay. Now what we can do is come back here, go to our four-way view, and we can give it a little render to make sure it looks okay. And that looks good to me. So we'll call that handle top, or handle loop. Sorry, my allergies are killing me. So we got our handle loop. Now for this little part down here, let me go back to the front. I'm going to hide that handle loop. Actually, let's hide it so the spline goes away too. Now this little guy, what I did is I created a lathe. And what a lathe is, let me create a new file. We'll talk about lathes. If we go to our front view, we could take a spline, and this is our pen tool, our spline tool over here. And I click on it. It's much like Illustrator. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the center, and maybe I'll be down here. I'll click, and I'll draw. Maybe up here, I'll get a little curve going. And again, if you click and drag, it's just like Illustrator. You get a nice Bezier curve. And I'm going to come up here, click and drag, maybe click. And now I'm going to add a little width. So I'm creating what looks like a half of a wine glass, right? Drag that in, and then maybe here. And I can connect those two. All right. Now what I can do is if I come in here, oops, not there, come down here and do a lathe. And if we drag this spline into the lathe, you can see what it does. Go back to our four-way view. Is it spins that spline in a 360 degrees. All right. So if we look at this here, we're seeing the lathe. Now, if you look at the options on the lathe, you can do some things like, maybe just have it start or be halfway. There's a lot of different things we can do there. If we look at our display with the shading, our subdivision is there, so we could crank it up more. If we need it smoother, etc. So that's the basic things of a lathe. A lathe can also be, if I delete that spline, we could take let's say we took a flower, and if we bring it out, so if I go to move that, hit just E for my move tool, and I drop that flower into the lathe, now you'll see it's going around the center. So wherever that lathe is, it's 360 degrees around. So again, if I bring this down, you can see what's happening. It's just taking that and lathing it around 360 degrees. So that's our basic lathe. So if I come back here to my untitled where I created the handle, we're going to just I'm going to zoom in a little, and we're going to lathe this little shape. So what I'm going to do is get my pen tool, and I'm going to start with it just very basic. So I'm going to come in here. I'm not going to put any rounding on. I'm just going to go 1. And if you hold down shift, it'll, I don't think it will. Okay, that's okay. So I'll go across, come up, come over, come up. Come over. Right, so I'm just going to do this. Now here I'll have to start doing a little, maybe I'll come out here and do a little thing here. Click and drag, and then up here, same thing. All right, let's just see how that looks. I'll hit escape. Now if we create a lathe, another lathe, and drag this into it, we can kind of see what we're getting. Now if I go to my four-way view, we get, these tough edges. Now we could do things like we could put a bevel on here. Now another tool that we have with splines, let me go back to the center here. I'm going to turn off my lathe by just hitting the check mark. So my spline's back. If I came into my splines, now what I could do, I'm going to go up here to this selection tool. Okay, and it's the brush selection, or you can do rectangle selection. And if I clicked around all of these 4 here, and maybe I grab shift and grab this. If I right click, we've got a tool called chamfer. Now once you hit it, you can see over here we've got some options, but you need to hit apply. Now what you can do is don't click on a point, but click out in space and click, hold, and drag, but keep dragging until you get the look you want, and then release. Now if you drag again, it's going to chamfer those points that are already selected, so it's going to get really funky and really weird. So I'm going to undo twice. I selected those 5 points, hit my chamfer, right click, chamfer, then click, hold, drag, and let go. And now if we turn our lathe back on and we go back to our four-way view, we've got a much smoother, nicer looking. Now I'm going to go back to my selection tool or my, now once you could see, once I went into this spline tool, I ended up in my points mode. So I'm going to come back here and click on model for a model mode. And now we can see it without this spline in the mix. All right. So that looks like a little chess pawn or something, right? But you can see now we get our nice little chamfers that way. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my loop back on and see how that feels. And now we could go ahead, select this, do a little Option G or Alt G, group it, call it handle. And then if we copy that, Command C, go back to our clock round, Command V, it's super big. So we could just move it up. Maybe scale it down, hit your scale over here. And again, make sure you're in your model tool. And then we can just scale it down till we think it looks good. I just hit O to zoom in, and then let's just drop it right there. Okay. So that's using, you can now see that with just these spline tools, there's a lot more options, and also Booleans, a lot more options that we can do, that we can start to get a lot more advanced modeling. So I hope you found that useful. And I did not talk about lofts, so let's talk about the last one, which would be a loft. So I'm going to go ahead and do one more new file. Boop. And so what a loft is, let's say we started with a circle spline. And what I'm going to do is put this on the floor, on the ground plane. So I'm going to go to the circle, and just like all of our primitives, we can say what plane, XZ, and that looks good. So I'm going to zoom out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bunch of copies of this, and there's different ways we can do it, but I'm just going to use this using the old command and drag. So I'm going to hold down command, hover over my Y, click drag, do it again, drag, and just drag a couple up. Okay. So now what I want to do is create a loft object, just right here, and shift select all these and drag them into the loft. Now the loft basically skins these splines. Now right now they're all the same size, so it's just creating a cylinder. If we go to, if we go to the loft, let's look at its options. We've got caps. So let's just turn those off for now. I'm going to do start and end off, so it's hollow. And let's say let's go to circle 1. Now if we do our display, rotating lines, hopefully we can see it, or yeah, that'll be fine. We know it's selected. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my circle and change its radius. All right, so now you can see it's creating this skin. Now if I go up to circle 2, and these need to be in the order, the loft will follow that order. So if I go to circle 2, maybe we'll bring that up a little bit, right? Circle 3, take it in, and maybe circle 4 is the same. So now we've got this like basic face shape or something, right? If we did want, the caps, we could turn those back on. If we just wanted the start, the bottom, we could always come in here and caps to start. Oh, that's our top. So the bottom would be our end. If we rotate around, there it is. And then we could say something, again, it's on Ngon. I'm going to do our regular grid, and we could start adding a little bevel on the bottom, right? And then you can see we've got our little shape here. That looks a little funky. There we go. I just went too crazy. Okay. So that's kind of the loft. It's very useful. Now the other thing is it doesn't have to be in a straight line. So if I decided to rotate this one, right? So I rotate that, then maybe I take these two, rotate them, and then maybe I move them over a little bit. And maybe this top one we rotate even more. And maybe this top one, instead of a circle, I make it an ellipse. And on my Y, I shrink it down. So maybe we're making some kind of vase or something, right? So there's a lot of different things you can do here to sort of create these shapes. Now that looks a little rough. So again, go into your loft, look at your object tab, subdivision U. So think of this as X and Y. U, V, W is like X, Y, Z, but for textures. So if we say U, that's our height, or X, sorry, that's our X. So that's then around here. So we can add some more subdivisions. And then on the Y, we just want to do the same thing. And now we can get kind of our things. And we just want to, we could go into these, find where we're getting sort of those kinks, like that one. Maybe it just needs to move a little and adjust, what we're doing. But yeah, so that's the loft. It's very organic. And the cool thing too is if you wanted to come in here and let's say this was kind of some kind of organ, like a liver or a lung or something, you could always, let's say circle 1, we wanted to animate that radius. And so if I came in here and I started at 0, maybe I go forward 15 frames and I scale it out a little, right? Bring it in a little bit more, scale it down, set another keyframe. And then you could see how easily you could just start getting some kind of organic looking animation happening, right? So a lot of options. We'll get into animation here shortly soon, but hopefully this got you through a lot of the splines. All right. Thanks for watching.